zero. Forgive us, Lord.
Good morning. Today for Wednesday, I want to look at how the church responds to injustice. And there is a slight dilemma here. When I was researching this, I looked up and looked at Social Justice Church, and a little pop-up came and it said you could find the Social Justice Church near you. So I went on, put my postcode in, and I discovered that there's a social justice church within walking distance of me. And no, it wasn't the Quakers. It happened to be Queen's Road Baptist Church. It was on the map as the nearest social justice church to me. Now, should this be the case, are we called to be involved with social justice? Will it make the world a better place? Why should the church be engaged with it? Is this the gospel that Jesus has told us to do? I'll ask Ewan to read a little passage from Luke.
Jesus returned to Galilee in the power of the Spirit, and news about him spread through the whole countryside. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone praised him. He went to Nazareth, where he had been brought up. And on the Sabbath day, he went into the synagogue, as was his custom. And he stood up to read. The scroll of the prophet Isaiah was handed to him. Unrolling it, he found the place where it is written, "The Spirit of the Lord is on me, because he has anointed me to preach good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to release the oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Then he rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant, and sat down. The eyes of everyone in the synagogue were fastened on him. And he began by saying to them, "Today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing." All spoke well of him and were amazed at the gracious words that came from his lips. "Isn't this Joseph's son?" they asked.
Justice is central to Jesus' gospel. Near the beginning of Jesus' ministry, he enters the synagogue in Nazareth and he reads from the prophet Isaiah, and he concludes by saying, "Today this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing." Now, the first Baptist Union church I ever went to, I had a chat with the pastor, and I was telling him about my concern about social justice and I believed that if we really got involved and people had the access to free education, free health, if they had nice houses, that they would automatically become really nice people. And this was really important for us as Christians. And he suggested something to me that I'd never thought of. He said, "But could it be possible that you'd make lots of clever devils?" So some in the church argue that social justice is not what the church is called to do, because it doesn't make for a better world. And they sometimes use the word Christian benevolence. So Jesus is asking us to look after the sick, to feed the poor. And if you look at something like Food Bank, it's doing a great job. But is this just giving a man a fish? There's a saying, if you give a man a fish, he'll be hungry again. Should we be doing just that? Or should we be looking at what causes this hunger? Why do we need food banks? Is there something that we as a church can do about this? Can we raise our voice? Can we say things about this? So the important thing is that we give a man a rod. And if we give a man a rod, then he can feed for himself. And I think the GAP project recognises this, and I've seen it help in this way. In the process of giving a man a rod, there was a man came in and he was homeless, and I introduced him to Olga. And Olga found various telephone people for him to telephone. And a few days later, I came back and I said, how did that man get on? And she said, oh, he was able to get a flat. And that, to me, is a way of giving a man a rod, and probably why we're called a social justice church. Because without justice, how can we love? If you love a person, you will want them to live in a just society. How can we progress as a church and do more? Giving even more rods, helping people to know Jesus. And I think making Clever Devils was an important thing for me to think about, because we want to offer more, don't we? We want to offer Jesus, because to make people completely whole, they need a relationship with Jesus. That's really important. I remember once in Uganda, I was in Kampala waiting for them to organise my transport to go up north to do the project they had in mind for me. And I looked around for a church and I found this little one called the Cornerstone Fellowship. And the pastor preached a really practical sermon about justice. He was telling the men that when they took meat home, they hadn't to eat half of it themselves. They had to share it with their family, with their children, and with their wives that they needed meat. He was telling them when they were at work and they were in the canteen, they prayed for everything. They didn't even take one extra pat of butter and not pay for it, because this is how Christians should act. And it was just quite a practical message. And then at the end he said, is there anybody here who hasn't been following Jesus and would like to? And to my amazement, 6 people put their hands up. I was so surprised. I didn't think there was any sort of emotion in the service that would have made them change their mind. And he challenged us all. He said, now then, you go out of this church and you tell people about Jesus. And he said, even you 6 that have just decided to follow Jesus, you've got something to say. Right from the beginning, start telling people. And then when I went back 3 months later, and I'm going into the church, and the person that greeted me at the door, I recognised them. They were one of the people who had put their hands up. And I started to talk to them, and they were so excited about following Jesus and what had happened in their lives. And I noticed 2 others. One was singing in a choir, and another one was helping in the Sunday school. And I just realised that this is really important, that we need this balance, don't we? And we need to try and address the problems of injustice, but we need too that people need to know Jesus. So we must awake to our call and try to help as Christians and as churches to raise our voices more in the fight for justice, but also not to forget the main message that we're set up for, not to get too involved with all the structures. The structures are important, the building's important, finance is important, but sometimes it can preoccupy the best parts of our time and telling other people and being out in the world, trying to find practical ways of telling people about Jesus. I found this prayer, and it's not mine, it's one that I found, and I thought it was really quite relevant for me. And I'd like to share it with you and to close the session with this prayer. Please, God, don't let us close doors that should be open. to stay in the box when we should break out, to bubble wrap ourselves so thoroughly that we cannot understand things outside our experience. Help us to show your love and help people to know freedom through Jesus.
Oh Lord, the clouds are gathering, the fire of judgment burns. How we have fallen, oh Lord. You stand appalled to see your laws of love so scorned and life so broken. Have mercy, Lord, forgive us, Lord. Restore us, Lord, revive your church again. Let justice flow like rivers, and righteousness like a never-failing stream. Have mercy, Lord.